Alright, so I'm going to work on my brakes a little bit and start cleaning up this mess over here. So I got oil down in there from when the motor blew up, so got to clean it up since the motor's out. But you see the brake lines aren't really plumbed the way I'd like it, not as clean as I'd like it, and it's because I did the brake setup when the motor was already in the car, and there's not much room right here when the motor's in here to really, plumb it properly. But it worked, it was fine. And actually I had it plumbed, and then I was like, I'm gonna put a line lock on this thing, and had to try to plumb all that with it. Again, with the motor in, it was just real tight. Kind of threw it together. It all worked. It was all sealed up. It's just not all bent the way I'd like it. So if those that don't know, when you do a Coyote swap, you have to either swap to manual brakes, which is what I did, or you can run a hydro boost setup where basically you're using power steering fluid to act as like your brake booster. You can't have the stock brake booster back here, the vacuum booster back here, because the cylinder heads, the Coyote engine is just too wide with the up top. So you have to go to either or. I didn't want to run a power steering pump since I built this car mainly for the track. I just went ahead with manual brake setup, and it's been working good. I drive it on the street, and it seems to stop okay, but I always just try to be mindful of a little stopping distance in front of me because it is manual brakes. Maybe someday I'll switch it over to power brakes hydro boost setup if I take it off the track. Then I'll go with power steering to it since I'll have a power steering pump on it. But just here's my master cylinder. A couple of things that I'm changing to. I switched over to these banjo bolts. Before it was just a fitting that came in here, and it was hard to get a 90-degree bend to try to have the most clearance in the by the fender well. So pick these up from Tim McAmis out of his race shop, and gonna start work on plumbing it up tonight. Just got to bend a couple brake lines. Gonna take apart some of the other ones and clean up that area where there's oil sitting, and just try to get things cleaned up. Picked up this tool, bought I think on Amazon. Good old Amazon coming through with the deals. It's like 15 bucks, but I know Lyle's a good brand. Use a bunch of their tools. Never used one of these. Kind of curious how they work for like tight spaces and trying to tweak some of the brake line. I'm gonna give it a shot tonight and see how it does. I've always just used some of the old school stuff, these bullshit things, but kind of melts a little bit. I think I was welding near it or something. I don't know. These things are junk though. Try a little different route. Track Dragon Nationals. So hopefully it's going to help me straighten some of these lines out without having to disconnect everything, redo it. I just want to kind of tweak them a little bit. They're there. I know it's sealed up. The master cylinder hides a lot of that stuff. So, it's just a little shitbox 93 Foxbody. So how good does it need to be? So I literally just took these out of the package, and I guess I thought Lyle was made in the USA stuff. I was wrong. Made in good old China. Kind of shows China. I don't know, the first thing I didn't like was grip it, and these things are sliding all around. That's one thing I hate about some hand tools, these things aren't on. It's like having a loose bike grip. So we'll see how it goes though. Alright, so you're going to use these pliers to try to just bend these lines a little bit, try to clean up as much as I can. I decided I didn't want to disconnect all the lines and have to redo everything. I know all that stuff is seated real good on that little T-block. So just trying these pliers, see if I can bend the lines a little bit, try to get a little tighter. And they're not working very good at all. I can get a good grip on the line, but when I try to bend them, the grips slip on the body of the pliers. Like I said, it's like a loose bite grip. Not really getting anywhere with this. So I think I'm just going to move forward and get the master cylinder mounted and just start running the 2 lines from the master cylinder down to that proportioning block. Alright, so now I got the master cylinder in. Just got to run 2 lines from the 2 outlets from the master cylinder down to what used to be the proportioning valve. This thing is all gutted now since I've converted this car to disc brakes, front and rear, 5-lug conversion, and basically using all SN95 stuff, and then went to manual. So I'm running an external proportioning valve which controls my brake pressure front to rear. So when you do that, you end up gutting this proportioning valve. So we just have one outlet coming from the master cylinder for the rear brakes, and then the front outlet from the master coming to serve the front brakes. So I'm just going to route some lines here from the master cylinder to this proportioning block. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using some filler rod that I use for aluminum TIG welding. Since these lines are going to be fairly short with some fairly tight bends, kind of more S-shaped than anything, I'm using this filler rod to get a general idea of what the shape's going to be. That way I can use that as a template and then take it to my workbench to actually bend the brake line. Makes it a lot easier. That way I don't have to crawl in and out of this engine bay 15 million times or be bent over the fender, for long periods of time. I don't have the best back in the world, so any shortcuts I can take, I try to take advantage of. So just, getting that first line kind of mocked up, cutting it to shape, bending a little bit, making sure it's going to fit properly. And then kind of put that in place and start bending up for the second line. Same process, just using my hands and the tools I'm going to use to bend the brake line, get into a general shape, and take that to the workbench. So I'm going to first flare this line. I got my flaring tool out, clamped it into my vise. It's just your normal flaring tool. You can pick them up at any auto parts store. I think you can even rent them. But I got my line set in there. Already set my depth with the adapter for a 3/16 line. And then I'm going to call this the arbor, running the arbor down to essentially create the first flare or a single flare. For what I'm doing, I'm going to end up doing a double flare. Some setups may need just a single flare, some may need the double flare. So I got my single flare done. Got to take the adapter back out. May have to use some pliers just to kind of wiggle it on out of there. Once you got that out, take the arbor again. Just going to run it back down. This is going to create that double flare, inverted flare. Just keep an eye on it so you don't go too aggressive. I've split some lines before. And once you got the double flare done, just loosen up the bolts and take out the line. There's your double flare. So I actually, when I was pulling out my flaring kit, I came across these pliers. I guess I already had a set. Just forgot all about it. But I ended up clamping these into the vise to use to bend my lines, and it worked pretty good. I didn't try the other pliers, but those Lyles that I picked up, I guess they'd work just as good. These were the first ones to grab. But it helped me get some of those tight bends that I was needing to do. You see, you just come back and got the first bend there, and I'm going to start the second bend. And just kind of go through the process of bending, cutting a line, flaring when needed, and using those templates that I'd made to create the lines.